Alright, good day class. So, atong lesson is about solid state fundamentals and diode. No? So, this is lecture 2 and then I'll separate a video, lecture video for diode. Alright, so let's start with the classification of materials based on their ability to conduct electricity or electrical current. So, there are three groups and I'm sure you're familiar with these three. No? We have insulators, conductors, and semiconductors. So let's begin with insulator. So I'm sure familiar na gid mo ng insulator kay nakakita na to ni naataan ni sa tong balay, sa tong ginadala sa school, sa tong charger sa phone. So insulator is a material that does not conduct electrical current under normal conditions. So most good insulators are compounds rather than single element materials and have very high resistivities and their valence electrons are more than 4. So mo ning characteristics sa mga insulator yung valence electrons, okay? More than 4. So, at ito ano yung characteristic class? It has a very high resistivity because, of course, conceptually, if you have a high resistance, then the lesser current ang mo flow ang material, right? So, if you have a very, very, very high resistivity sa yung material, it's as if wala na dyan, may zero na dyan, almost zero na dyan ang mo flow current. So, that's a very important characteristic of your insulator. Kaya kung wala sa insulator class, kanang mga charger na to sa phone, sa laptop, sa itong mga wiring sa balay, of course, mo-flow na din ang current niya. Kung hikap ka na, mamatay ka diretso. Diba? So, it's very important to have insulator. Kaya gina-insulate po na niya itong mga wires, no? Inside your gi-insulate niya ang mga conductors inside sa mga wirings. Okay. So example sa itong insulator, rubber, plastics, glass, mica, and quartz. So, natin mga wool, fabric, plastic, and paper, and so on. So, another example na ako na-include is actually itong hair. So, familiar mo mag-ingon sila na if naano mo kuryentihan, then dili ka mahikap sa any part of your body except sa hair. Kaya pwede ra ka mo, binawin mo ang buhok para dili ka maapil o kakuwintihan because the hair is an insulator. Okay, so let's go to conductor and this is the opposite of your insulator. It is a material that easily conducts electrical current and most metals are good conductors. So the best conductors are single element materials such as copper, silver, gold, and aluminum, which are characterized by atoms with only one valence electron very loosely bound to the atom. So natay silver, gold, seawater, copper, examples of good conductors. Okay, so take note of its important characteristic class no, in terms of the number of electrons, number of valence electrons sa kanang atom. Okay, so it has one, okay, one rayang valence electrons. As compared to your insulator, it has 5 valence, dili necessary 5. It has more than 4 valence electrons. Okay, so example, in a copper wire, no? Kung high voltage, as I mentioned last, katong process of losing your valence electrons no, to become free electrons is ionization. So, meaning naka-gain of enough energy ang imong electrons to jump from another atom. So, kano sa na siya mahitabo? Of course, when there is heat, and when there is voltage applied, no? So sa atong copper, for example, when voltage is applied, it forces all the free electrons to move and to produce an electricity. Okay? Dili lang enough nga mahimo siya from valence to free electrons, pero mag-move na po siya from one atom to another. Okay? So it is then this movement of free electrons that provides the electric current in a metal conductor. Okay? Kanang mga naka-purple rin mo na electrons, no? So they jump from one atom to another and then produces your electricity. Okay, let's go to semiconductor. So semiconductor, from the word semi, no? Dili siya full gid nga conductor. Dili siya full nga insulator. So unsa man na siya? It is a material that is between your conductors and insulators in terms of its ability to conduct electrical current. So later na tayo example. So, yung semiconductor, meaning pwede nato siya makontrol, as pwede nato siya as if it's an insulator, dili siya mo-conduct. And pwede sa nato siya i-bias in such a way na mo-conduct siya. Okay, so that's more special, more advantage sa mga semiconductor over your conductors and insulators because it doesn't always conduct, but it can conduct whenever you want it to. Okay. So single element semiconductors, example na antimony, arsenic, boron, silicon, germanium, etc. And they are characterized by atoms with 4 valence electrons. So balik-balik taan ni class. No? If you remember akong example, silicon and germanium, both of them have 4 valence electrons because both of them are examples of a semiconductor. So, ang pinaka-commonly used na semiconductor is actually silicon. Actually, silicon yung germanium. Pero, silicon ang pinaka-most commonly used because it is more abundant than germanium. Okay? So, natin mga compound semiconductors, gallium arsenide, silicon carbide. Ako yung video pakita or pwede na sa ninyo i-click later. Kung yan mo tanaw, yun sa pag-extract ang inyong silicon from your sand. Okay, again, as I mentioned, um, abundant man kaya ang silicon for us and you can find it in sand. Okay, so these are examples of semiconductor natin, diode, mga diode na class, natin mga IC, gated circuit, natin mga transistors. Okay, so these are semiconductors. I'm sure you're familiar with LED. Nagamit naman mga na diode, this will be used in yung second laboratory. So, i-explain ko dato ang concept sa diode on the next lecture. Okay, let's go to what we call the band gap. So, yung band gap. So, once your electron class leaves the valence shell and becomes a free electron, it will exist now in the conduction band. So, take note lang, when we are discussing or when we are thinking about conduction band, valence band, naman yung mga inana-term na kanyang valence band, conduction band. We're not really talking about a physical thing, no? It's like an abstract concept. Kaya ito lang siyang gigamit para ma-visualize natin asa na dapat yung electrons. Okay? So, your valence electron, pag makagain siya enough energy, di ba, may mo siyang free electron. And it will now exist in what we call the conduction band. Pwede na siya mo-conduct. So, ang difference between your valence band and the conduction band is called the energy gap or the band gap. Okay, so this is this is the amount of energy, yung band gap or energy gap, the valence electron must have in order to jump from the valence to the conduction band. So, basta nalibog mo, pare-pareho lagi siya og concept sa ionization energy. In a way, they're the same, but they're different in the sense that ionization energy is more focused on the atom lang, no? When your valence electron acquires that sufficient energy para mo ka-free lang din siya ba? Maka-free lang din siya from the valence shell. Okay? But when we're talking about band gap, the amount of energy, we're talking about its ability to jump from one atom to another. Okay? It's more on macro na siya. No? It talks about the whole material na yung electron. No? What's the energy, that amount of energy, parang pwede na siyang conduct. Okay, so again, that's the amount of energy nga kailangan para mo ambak siya from valence to your conduction band. So kung i-visualize nito siya, klase nga niya siya. So if this is your energy, nasa y-axis niya mo, this will be the energy diagrams for the 3 types of materials. And makita natin class for insulator, they have a very wide gap between your valence band and your conduction band. And in reality, nakuha na siya infinite na iyahang gap between your valence and your conduction band na almost impossible na for your valence electrons to jump to the conduction band. Meaning, hindi na conduct. Ako ulit guys. Okay. For semiconductor, because it is in between your insulator and conductor, nasa a certain amount of band gap, yeah, but definitely lesser than your insulator. and ma-close lang ni natay way to close this gap class so that your valence band or your electrons on your valence band can go to your conduction band and can able to will be able to conduct or will be able to uh, jump from one atom to another and create electron flow. For your conductor class, you will have an overlapping of your valence band and conduction band because conceptually, kung ang conductor ni mo class, it's very easy to conduct man. Basta murag gamay na kayo mo i-trigger sa iya, conduct na din na siya. Okay? So, these are the energy diagrams of the three types of materials. And even if wala ka kasabot, or even if this is your first time seeing this visualization, dali lang mo masabtan nga, okay, insulator, very wide band gap. Kaya dili mo siya makonduct. Semiconductor, last with the insulator, and then finally conductor will have a very small gap or even overlapping na siya. Okay, let's go to semiconductor versus conductor atom. Okay, wala naman tayo care sa insulator. Actually, compare na to on screen, no? Pero ang atog yung interest is the semiconductor. So we compare it with the conductor atom and how is it different in terms of kumbaga unsa siya ka easy mo conduct ba or unsa siya ka hard mo conduct ba. Okay. So tan-aw na to ning silicon atom class nga nasa left and then this copper atom nga nasa right. No? So take note that your silicon atom has 14 atomic number, meaning 14 ka protons o 14 ka electrons. Your copper atom has 29, no? 29 ka protons and 29 ka atoms at electrons. So, sa imong silicon atom, and gikuha na nato ang ihang number of shells ani before class. So remember, we have 3 shells, you know, wherein the first shell will have 2 electrons, okay? And then the second shell will have 8, and then the last will have 4. Okay. So the copper atom, ipakuha po ni sa inyo nga, it has 4 shells, 2, 8, and 18 sa third shell, and then finally 1 electron sa imong outermost or sa imong fourth shell. So there are so many ways to think of this class and to differentiate the two atoms. So first is ang iyang number of valence electrons. Okay. The number of valence electrons for silicon is 4. Okay? And copper atom 1. So they kani pa lang characterize na nila kung saan semiconductor or conductor. Semiconductor has 4 valence electrons, conductor has 1 valence electron. Okay? Second is asa nga shell ang imuhang valence electron. Your valence electrons class for the silicon atom are on the third shell. Okay? While your valence electron on the copper atom is on the fourth shell. So, based on the concept, ang imong electrons, magkalayo siya sa imong nucleus. It will have more energy, no? More energy ang layo ha, more distant atoms compared to the electrons na closer sa imong nucleus. Okay? So, meaning, kanina yung kanina yung 1 nga valence electron sa imong copper atom tungod kay na siya sa fourth shell, it will have higher energy than the valence electrons nga naa sa imong silicon because sa silicon naa siya sa third shell. Okay? So, conceptually, ang imong valence electron, kini nga valence electron will have much higher energy than these valence electrons. So again, nanapod siya advantage or nanapod siya leverage kani nga electron ba na siya leverage over these electrons sa silicon. So mas dali siya, mas sa tawag ni mas loose siya or less tightly bounded to the whole atom. So mas naa pa siya ability to jump from one atom to another. Okay? So more money energy. Another thing is that your core, kining core, unsa man yung core dili? Okay, remember that our net charge, di ba class, is 0. So meaning, Ang kaning core na to class, core actually is your nucleus, sorry, your atom, ano na lang, para mas dali siya. Anong duwan? Core is your atom, whole atom, minus your valence electrons or valence shell. Okay. Everything except your valence shell. Okay, mo na yung core. So, ang core nimo sa silicon atom class, away ang charge, plus 4, plus 14. Wait lang ha. Sorry, plus 4 plus 4. Sorry, plus 4. Anong plus 4 man? Kaya imong valence electron, upat ka buo. So, imong valence shell will have a charge of -4, correct? So, kung i-combine natin ng the valence shell and the core, it will have a net charge of 0, correct? So, nakay plus 4 nga core sa imong silicon. Sa imong copper atom, because you have one valence electron sa imong valence shell, nakay -1 nga charge sa imong valence. So, that means ang imong core die is plus 1. Okay, plus 1 ra ang charge. So, in this way, you can also tell that aside from the fact that your valence electrons in your copper atom is relatively stronger or relatively has a higher energy than your valence electrons sa silicon atom, another thing that adds to its conductivity nga ability ba is that the core of your copper atom has only plus 1 nga charge than your silicon atom. So, yung silicon atom, stronger siya, relatively stronger or has higher energy as compared to your copper atom. So, not only the nga imong valence electron sa imong silicon atom has less energy than your copper atom, ang imong pa yung core sa silicon is much stronger. So, mas mubira pa siya maayo. Aning mga electrons diha class sa imong silicon. Kini siya plus 1 dili ra ayo. Okay? Loose na gani siya, higher energy na gani siya, plus iyang core pag yun is plus 1 ra ang iyang charge. So, kaning nga electron very free or very free, very kanang maximum kayang potential ba to jump from one atom to another. So, pwede gina siya maambak diretso. Okay? So, dili kayo kusog ang core or dili kayo strong ang core. Um, Layo kayo siya and then higher energy pa rin siya. Okay? So, if you compare the copper atom and silicon atom, makaingon yung ka nga ang valence electrons ng copper atom has higher conductivity potential. Okay? So, let's go to this na class. Okay, let's go to the covalent bond. So it is a chemical bond that involves the sharing of electron pairs between your atoms. So, familiar naman ta nga most atong ginagamit mostly commonly used na semiconductor is silicon. So, let's have silicon atom. So, ate lima dere. Actually, we call this as silicon crystal. Pero di ko alam na to class para makita ninyo pila ka iyang gi-share ba na electron. So, you have the silicon here, silicon atom, silicon atom, silicon atom, silicon atom. Okay. So, again, iyang mo iyang core no naka plus 4. Naka plus 4 silicon manitanan. So, if we kuan if we let silicon atoms share electron pairs with each other, ingani yung itsura. Tungod kay na siya 4 diya sa gawas glass. And kung mabutang ka 4 surrounding silicon atoms no, sa iyaha, kining imuhang middle nga silicon atom, it will share electron pairs sa each nimo nga silicon. So sa first nimo nga silicon sa taas, they will share 2, okay, one from each other. Munang kung imo siyang i-simplify into this image na kahit duha lang ka line, meaning they share 2 electrons. Sa isa po 2 electrons, yapon 1 from each. Okay, 2 yapon. And so on. Okay, so this is your bonding diagram. And what you call this this chemical bond is covalent bond. So kung ato pa yun ng butang silicon diha kaya silicon diha ano. So mag-share na po na silang duha. Kini mag-share na po na silang duha. And so on. Maka-create of what you now call the silicon crystal. So each silicon atom positions itself with four adjacent silicon atoms para sa na to form a silicon crystal. So this creates the what you call um this creates the eight shared valence electrons. Kaya kung i-count ni mo diri class kaning isa ka silicon atom, yang gi-share kay 8, no? 2, 4, 6, 8. Okay. 8 shared valence electrons for each atom, and it can produce the state of chemical stability. So it's very, very stable class. You create this silicon crystal, okay, for covalent bond. Okay, siya nga ni siya. And okay, another one terminology that needs to be remembered is imong silicon crystal class. Kini imong mga silicon crystal mo naman ni siya. We call this intrinsic crystal if it has no impurities. So, unsa man yung impurities? Intrinsic, bitaw siya intrinsic because innate niya ba? Innate. Wala kay gibaya sa iya, wala kay gibutang, gidagdag bawas sa iya. Okay? So, this is what you call the intrinsic crystal. So, again, if you want to see the video given sa pag-extract sa silicon from the sand, pwede ninyo i-click na link. So, ato ta karon class, before we go to impurities, ato sa nang i-discuss ang current in semiconductors. So, there are two current na um, atong discussan. You call it the electron current and the hole current. But before that, ato sa i-describe class, no? Anong like conduction, electrons, and holes from yung hole. Okay? So, ato naman yung discuss na concept, no? Free electrons are also called conduction electrons. Ang free electrons kay katong lagi kung niambak na siya from your valence shell to the conduction band or valence band to the conduction band, it will now be called the conduction electrons. Okay, so current class, when an electron jumps to the conduction band, okay, so imagine in an atom, ang imong valence shell dira niambak. Okay, naka-acquire siya sufficient energy, may masyadong free electron, and it will now go to the conduction band and will now be called the conduction electron. So, kuning electron class, pag ambak niya, a vacancy is left. This vacancy is called a hole. So, you can think of it as sa inyong life. When someone leaves, so there's this emptiness or hole sa inyo. Yan ang nagapon sa atom class. When an electron jumps or leaves, there is a vacancy there that is left, and you call it a hole. Okay, so this creates an electron hole pair. So as we go along in our discussion, maka-encounter tayo pero hole, yan na. Pero dili pa sabot nga mura na siya class. Ang hole means just the absence of it doesn't really exist on its own. Mura siyang darkness ba? We cannot create darkness, pero it's just an absence of light. Nga na ang imong concept sa hole. Pero the way we discuss it on the next lectures is that it's existing. Okay? Pero anyways, dili mo kanin siya importante. Pero the concept is there lang. Okay? So again, when an electron jumps to the conduction band, maka-create ka hole ito, no? So this creates now what you call the electron hole pair. Yan niya ang itsura kung atong i-visualize using the energy diagram, no? So na kay mga valence electrons diri sa imong valence band, and na kay enough heat energy maka-acquire of sufficient energy in valence electrons to jump to the conduction band. So padulong diri ang electron and ana kay hole dira. Okay? So yan siya yung itsura. Pag-ambak niya. Okay. Now, what happens when it loses energy? Example, dili niya ma-sustain ang external energy katulad energy nga imong apply. Okay? What happens is the electron will fall back into the hole in the valence band. Okay, mangita siyang hole na available. Ngayon, ma-fall back siya dito. And the process is called now recombination. And it occurs when again, conduction band electron loses energy and falls back into a hole in the valence band. Okay? So, think of it as, pag after niya ni-leave, nibalik siya. And then, they already recombine or the process is now recombination. Okay, sige, next. Okay, let's go to the electron and hole current. So, when a voltage glass is applied across a silicon, the thermally generated free electrons in the conduction band are free to move, okay, and are attracted toward the positive end. Now, think of it as di na lang magaling na walang taga-random na heat energy. Pero in actual setup, we're actually creating a closed circuit. Ano? So the electrons, the free electrons, now in the conduction band, free na silang move. And because they are negatively charged, what happens is they are attracted toward the positive end. So kung tanaw na to karon class, example, this is your semiconductor material, nga ato siya gi tanaw no cross-sectionally, mo na yung mga silicon crystals no. So what happens is, kanang mga electron yung madra, yes, they will jump from one atom to another, but in a manner na medyo uniform. Because ang naka-positive ray, meaning naka-apply nga voltage ya class, na heat to the electrons will go towards the positive end. Okay. Now this movement of free electrons is what you now call the electron current. All right. So, kana siya no? Electron current. Now, let's go to to another type of current. And this, ako lang i-emphasize no, this electron current class happens in your conduction band. Of course, because you're already applying voltage, there's already heat, so for sure, nakandak na natira. Okay. For your whole current or another current that we're going to talk about last, it occurs in the valence band, where the holes created by the free electrons exist. Okay, dito siya, dito na nag-occur imong isa ka type of current, which is hole current. So, what happens in your valence band is that your valence electron, it will move into a nearby hole with little change in its energy level. Okay, thus leaving another hole where it came from. Okay, so again ha, ang imong hole current happens in the valence band. Pero imong valence electron class, dili gid siya exactly or totally maka-ambak ng unbecome free electron. Pwede siya mag-ambak within the atom lang. Example, naka-acquire siya energy pero not enough for the electron to jump, pero not enough for it to jump to the conduction band. Okay? Jump lang siya within the atom. So, kaya siya, ang valence electron will move no, to the nearby hole. Kung sa hole na pinaka-drop, mag-ambak-ambak siya within the atom. Okay? So, of course, there's a movement of electrons na hapon. No? So, naya pag igagmay kay nga kung imo na i-measure, gagmay kay nga current flow, electron flow diatas sa imong valence band. Pero to distinguish it from your electron current, we call it the hole current. Yan naman, because when your valence electron jumps from one hole to another, it's as if it's creating a hole current opposite to the direction of your electron current. Okay? So, yung ano siya itsura class. For example, your electron moves to this hole. Okay? Then sunod, move na po siya dira. Move na po siya dira. Kung magtanaw ka class sa imong hole, kung example, dalitaw na, okay, mo din yung one. Example, imong valence electron na nag-jump na. Okay? And then, ang imong valence electron nga tapat sa imong first hole, move siya ginani. Iya itong i-occupy ang first. And then third, and then fourth, and so on. So, ang imong valence electron, gamove siya paana, padulong sa hole. So it's as if gamove yung hole. Nakay hole diri, and then ang next na mga ma-vacant kini, ang next na vacant kana, and so on. So it will have an opposite direction sa imong valence electron ng movement. Okay? So kung imong valence electron gamove paana, imong hole move paana. Of course, I'd like to emphasize class na wala man dyan whole current. Ang whole current na itong is talk about diri is the movement is actually the movement of your valence electron. Pero dili ta pwede mag-redundant sa atong term because we already call the electron current sa atong conduction band, no, nga electron current. So, para di ta ma-confuse, siguro, ang ilang ginawa is para dili ma-confuse, whole current na lang atong itawag ana. So, I hope it's clear, no? So again, um, the valence electron movement creates the whole current. Okay? So, kung ato i-tabulate, summarize na to class, this is the current in semiconductors. Electron current, amo siya mag-occur, conduction band. And characteristic is movement of your electrons towards the positive end. Your whole current happens or occurs in the valence band. And as a characteristic na class, this is the movement of your valence or the movement of your valence electrons to a nearby hole that produces this somewhat movement of holes. Okay, so that will be the end of current in semiconductors. Let's go to doping. So, kaganina, natay gi-mention dito no nga, an intrinsic crystal, yung characteristic niya is it has no impurities. So, ano man yung impurities? Dili nato na ma-discuss last. So, semiconductors, nakita nato na we compare silicon sa atong copper atom. So, compared to copper atom, dili kayo siya conductive. Okay? So, since semiconductors are generally poor conductors, their conductivity can be drastically increased para mas ma-increase na to ang conductivity sa semiconductor class. Pwede tayo mag-add of impurities. Pero na dahil, saan yung impurities? Okay. Impurities to intrinsic or pure semiconductor material. So this process is now called doping. When in doping, it increases the number of current carriers, either electrons or holes. Kaya di ba naingon ta, pusutan na electron current or hole current because we want to have conductivity sa itong material. Okay? So the two categories of impurities na itong i-add is N-type and P-type. So sa mga N-type, dali na siya i-distinguish sa duha class from each other because N can stand for negative and P stands for positive. So ito sa N-type semiconductor. N-type semiconductor basically is naka-semiconductor class niya nagbutang kang impurity atom na mas daghan ang electron. Okay, negative. So, daghanon yung mga electron para mas daghan siya og charges ba, maposible mo ambak pira. Okay. So, we increase the number of conduction band electrons in our intrinsic silicon. How do we do that? We add pentavalent impurity atoms. So, ang sabi ng penta is 5. Yung valent, of course, atong D, aga-indicate niya siya nga this is the number of valence electrons. Okay. So 5 daw ka valence electrons. So these are atoms with 5 valence electrons. Some mga example ani arsenic, phosphorus, bismuth, antimony. So kung ano siya ang mga usual na na-letter na sa ako. Tapos gina-inject nila dito sa semiconductor materials. No? So for example, ang atong crystal gawin na is silicon, purely silicon. Itong gibuhat is nagbutang taon isa ka example sa kanila nga area isa ka antimony nga atom Sp, tama ba? Antimony nga, yes, antimony. So pentavalent is tungod kay 5 yung valence electron, naa siya isa ka sobrang electron because we want to have 4 valence electrons, diba, for your semiconductor. So that means ang imong isa ka electron free na siya, no, for your antimony. So that's why you call your pentavalent atom a donor atom, ga-donate siya og electron. So, dili na po na isa ka atom yung daghan kang pwede mabutang ng pentavalent atom sa imuhang material. Okay, para mas daghan ka og extra ng mga electron. And so, this will create a more conductive material sa inyong semiconductor. Okay, so since daghan naman kang electron, extra electron, tawag na din siya N-type semiconductor class. Kaya as I mentioned, N is for negative charge. No? So, karon kani nga conductor will have more electrons than holes. So that means the electrons now are called the majority carriers in N-type material. So kanila yung naman, so n-type negative plus daghang electron, that means electrons kay majority carriers. And of course, kung majority ang electron, what is the other um material or so what is the other charge in nila? Ang hole. Okay. Hole are called the minority na layo. Okay, let's go to p-type. And this is, of course, the opposite of your n-type semiconductor. So, ang ginabot ko sa p-type semiconductor class is to increase the conductivity instead of adding an electron, ga-add of more holes. Okay? So, ga-add of material or atom with three valence electrons. We call this the trivalent impurity atom. So, from the word tri and three. Okay? Example, ano, boron, indium, aluminum, and gallium. Okay? So, for the p-type semiconductor, of course, a trivalent atom can take is added to the material, no? So, nasa isa ka extra na hole and it can take an electron. So, katong pentavalent, you call it the donor atom, nag-donate siya atom. Kini po siya is an acceptor atom. Maka-accept siya ng electron. Tungod ka na siya extra isa ka hole. Okay, so if gaan tag whole class, in a way, we're actually um adding ability ba for the material to conduct. Iga-accept niya siya always of electron. Daghan siya uh, means ba nga maka-accept siya of electron. So, ang mga electron can jump from one hole to another. So, yung conduction will increase. Okay? So, since most of the current carriers are whole, daghan mo gina-inject diha nga mga trivalent atom, no? So, of course, we call it the p-type semiconductors. Daghan ka positive. So the current carriers are holes na in this semiconductor type of semiconductor. So the holes now are called the majority na. Okay. And then electrons, siya na po ang minority. So opposite rin ang p-type or n-type semiconductor. But both of these semiconductors, gibuhat niya siya para high ang imong conductivity. They have the same purpose basically. Okay, so that's the end of lecture 2. And lecture 3, I will record now, pero i-separate lang ko ang video. Then we'll start with diode and then so that you will understand your activity tomorrow.